Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily. I'm Konrad Gorlinski. We at Telewizja Republika were the first to provide a first-hand look into the final reports of the subcommittee investigating the causes of the Smolensk disaster. What was disclosed belies the narrative introduced by the Russians about the role of a birch tree, which supposedly caused the tragic presidential plane accident 11 years ago.
According to the findings of Tatiana and Nodina's commission and the overlapping conclusions of the Polish commission chaired by Jerzy Miller, the cause of the plane crash near Smolensk was due to the errors of the pilots that resulted in the presidential plane staggering its left wing against a tree growing at a considerable distance from the airport runway. We should come to a uniform message, not built upon unconstructive myths and suspicions, or we will be shooting ourselves in the foot. Early into the investigation of the incident, the Russians insisted on the key role of a birch in Smolensk in bringing about the tragic consequences of the catastrophe. The first impact with the ground took place 200 meters from here, and as the landing gear was already extended, the plane overturned. Everything took place here, then it caught fire. According to the results derived from the findings of the subcommittee appointed to reinvestigate the Smolensk catastrophe, the cause of the presidential plane accident was likely to be two explosions on the plane.
Pilot podnosi klapę do 28 stopni na odejście.
The pilot raises the flap to 28 degrees per departure. After about 3 seconds, the direction of the autopilot changes the rudder position, making the plane slide to the right. It was a reaction to the explosion from the loss of lift to the left and an attempt to stop the plane from tipping to the left. This is the moment when the wing was lost as a result of an explosion of the Tu-154 aircraft. As it swerved around, the explosion broke off the tip of the wing. The autopilot made a response followed by the pilot's own attempt at keeping the plane stable. In the cut-off parts of the wings, curls characteristic of explosion aftermaths were visible, and the shape of the destruction indicated the explosive nature of the damage. Not without significance is the shape of the edge of the cut-off part and the one remaining in contact with the hull. The research also showed that numerous traces of explosive substances were found on the wreckage of the plane. Experimental research on the model of the fuel cutter allowed us to observe characteristic traces of the explosives visible in the case of Smolensk in action. To further muddy the investigation in identifying the decay of the wing, on 11 and 12 of April, the Russian services cut the brows of the center wing. According to witnesses, the prosecutor's office and members of Miller's commission also had knowledge about the presence of explosives. The appearance of individual parts of the wreckage indicated that the plane sustained damage while still airborne. The course of the Smolensk tragedy, determined by the subcommittees, was also indicated by a very detailed analysis of the distribution of the remains of the victim's body at the scene. Today, we know that Smolensk tragedy would not have taken place had it not been the explosion that destroyed the left wing of the Tu-154M plane, killing 88 passengers and 8 crew members in the process. These are the lights shed on the Smolensk catastrophe, the greatest tragedy that hit independent Poland after 1945.
During a mass today at a Balham church, the London Metropolitan Police Commissioner, Andy Wadey, expressed regret over the interruption of the Good Friday service last week at the Polish Church of Christ the King in Balham. He assured that the Metropolitan Police had carefully considered these events since then and wished to establish a new, lasting relationship with the Polish Church and its community.
The incident took place on Good Friday, April 2nd, around 6 p.m. During the liturgy of the Lord's Passion, 2 policemen entered the church, informing the assembled believers that the epidemic restrictions had been violated and ordered them to leave after paying a fine of £200, and in case of refusal to carry out the order, face arrest. The church member obeyed the order with little objection. The police wrote in a later statement that some of the church attendees were not masked and those present in the church failed to maintain a social distance, so the officers decided that it would not be safe to continue service. The church raised objections to the assessment, stressing that it is an overstep in jurisdiction and all governmental mandates were met during service. while the official interrupted the public worship under regulations that were long obsolete. During a mass today, Commissioner Andy Weddy has this to say: "We are all aware of the events that took place here on Good Friday. Met's intention is to support and protect the community during the pandemic. But we know many people were very upset about what happened on Good Friday, and we deeply regret it." He assured that the Metropolitan Police had carefully considered these events since then. "I sincerely hope that today will mark the beginning of a renewed and lasting relationship with Christ the King parish in Valheim, as well as the entire Polish community," said Wedley. He stressed that the last year has been incredibly difficult for everyone in Linden, and the COVID-19 pandemic has forced the introduction of restrictions that pose new challenges for religious communities as well as the police themselves. But the police's goal is to serve everyone, including the Polish community and all Catholic communities.
And yesterday in Los Angeles, 3 young children were found dead when their grandmother came to visit them at an apartment where they lived with their mom. The mother, 30-year-old Liliana Carrillo, is the main suspect in this horrifying crime that has shocked America. This crime has international relevance because it shines a light on the mental illness crisis that's brewing as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. Our Małgorzata Schulz was there at the crime scene and brings us the story of this horrendous murder of these young children who were all under the age of 5.
A building behind me in Reseda, California, is still an active crime scene. Today in the morning, there were 3 babies found by a grandmother, 3-year-old, 2-year-old, and a 6-month-old baby, most likely killed by their own mother, stabbed to death with a knife. This is still an active crime scene. There is a police presence. Investigators are here at the scene. Very tragic day for Los Angeles and for the whole country, as it's really hard to imagine this type of crime happening in a quiet neighborhood of Los Angeles. At this point, when the pandemic has been going on for over a year, a mental health issue became a very big factor. Most likely that is probably the reason, but there is no official statement yet made.
According to the latest data from the Polish Ministry of Health, the number of people infected with the coronavirus in Poland has increased by 21,700 cases over the last 24 hours. 245 people died.
As of yesterday, the largest number of those infected was recorded in the Silesian, Mazovian, and Greater Poland provinces. Almost 3,500 patients required a connection to ventilators. Since the beginning of the pandemic, the number of people infected in the country has exceeded 2,500,000. The number of deaths from COVID-19 is approaching 58,500. Till now, 7,635,264 vaccinations against the coronavirus have been carried out. The first dose was administered to over 5,529,000 people, and the second dose over 2,150,000.
Thanks for tuning in, and have a great week ahead.